Emma Ward is a 2-time winner of the Making Moves Award at the Elites, our awards night. This award recognises a woman in a commercial role in tech sales who is not only a high performer, but also an advocate for other women and works outside of their organisation to drive change for women in the industry. You might be thinking, how did she win this award not just once, but 2 years running? So today I asked her just that. In this value-packed episode, we cover how she encourages high performance. She shares her goal-setting framework, feedback matrix, and how to make sure that her team hit target. We then discuss being an advocate for women and making a real difference from bringing more people into the industry at entry level. And lastly, we chatted about the 5 key things that businesses need to look at to change their DNA to make real impact, instead of just quick wins and looking at diversity as a tick box exercise. Let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome to the next episode of Sales Unfiltered. Today I'm joined by the incredible Emma Ward. This has been so long coming. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We won't, but we could chat for 2 hours.
Literally,
so
hours.
Strap in. But today, when I was thinking about what I wanted to learn from you and what I think the listeners would be really interesting, and actually I think a question that you get quite a lot, not to toot our own horn, but we run an awards called the Elites, and to toot your horn, you won the Making Moves Award 2 years consecutively, which is just an incredible feat. And for those that don't know what the Making Moves Award is, it's an award for women in tech sales in any commercial role. So firstly, I know I said it on the night, but huge congratulations. How did it feel to win twice?
Thank you. It was amazing. I genuinely wasn't expecting it the second time. I wasn't expecting it the first time, but I definitely wasn't expecting it the second time round. It was one of those moments where I was like in the process for the award and I was sort of thinking, I'll say everything as normal, but it's not going to go to me a second time. And then when it happened, I was sat next to potentially Lauren Rees. She sort of nudged me and was like, Emma. And I was like, oh,
you're like,
it's me.
Like the Beyonce meme of her winning Album of the Year at the Grammys.
Exactly.
So she's like, what?
Yes, I am Beyonce. No, I'm joking.
You are. And to be fair, whenever we do that award, we do play the Beyonce music to come up on stage.
That
so you are
true.
Beyonce.
That's true.
Well, congrats. Definitely, because I am not involved in the judging at all. For those that don't know, there's 15 judges that are on the panel. So it was a really rigorous process. There's 4 rounds of judging, video submissions for your manager, a virtual interview with the judges. So I didn't have anything to do with the scoring, but when I saw that you were winning, I was like, people are gonna think this is rigged.
I know. It was honestly, I came off the stage and came back down again, and I said to the table I was sat on, I was like, people are gonna think this is rigged.
But it absolutely wasn't. You so deserved it. And today we wanted to chat about how you won that award, because not necessarily just for the elites, but being recognised as a brilliant female in tech sales, I think is just such an accolade and something that I think so many more companies should be doing to recognise the brilliant work that they do. And I know it's something that you are really passionate about. It's about supporting women in the industry. So I wanted to start with a little quote from, I think this was your manager that submitted your application. It was just really lovely. They said, Emma should win the Making Moves Award because she has dedicated so much time to her team, her colleagues, and the community inside and outside of work. She does this because she's passionate about empowering women and reminding them that sky's the limit. She thrives off seeing other people's success and wants to share what has helped her. Had you heard that?
No, I
Get the tissues out.
Amazing.
So cute.
Oh, that's so lovely. I know exactly who wrote that, so I have to send her a message straight afterwards.
No,
but no,
so
that is so lovely.
But I think that's one of the more important things, is like understanding that to win awards like this, what we were looking at was high performance. So you have to be individually a high performer, but then also what you do to advocate for women outside of just your role. And so there were quite a few things that we looked at to get this winner of this award. What do you think that businesses should be doing more to support the support of their leaders? Because I think that is a really important thing that they do need to put a lot more work into.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. It actually ties really nicely into, I think, the DE&I topic of why we'll focus on women, why women want to be in and stay in, importantly, a role. In my experience, I think there's a really big mistake that businesses can make, and that is looking at your highest performing IC and saying that they should be a manager because they're performing really well. Being a good solo performer, or in terms of sales, being the best salesperson or the best SDR, does not necessarily mean you're going to be a good leader, because the skills are not the same. Leadership skills are so different and a completely different variety. And when you're an IC, to be good at being an IC, yes, there's an element of teamwork involved. Yes, you know, collaboration and being creative and having a positive impact on the business is really important, but you are focused on your own results. As a leader, to be successful, I firmly believe that you need to be focusing on your team's results. Yes, that makes your results good, but if you only focus on your own results, you're not thinking about the individuals on your team and how they're all having an impact on that sort of bigger picture and bigger number. So there's a very different mindset shift from being an IC to a leader in that sense. Not only that, there's a lot of empathy and compassion that goes into leadership roles. There's a lot of nurturing, patience. There's so many different... you are a therapist a lot of the time. Might as well have a psychology degree. I think it would actually be hugely beneficial
100%.
to study psychology as a leader.
We had somebody on the podcast recently that was talking about conflict management, and they're like, why do HR professionals get trained in this but leaders don't?
Exactly, because we are dealing with it day to day. By the time it gets to HR, it's escalated to a certain point, right? As leaders, we're dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And when you step into a leadership role, I think something you're really unprepared for is it's not just about, you know, the results, the behaviours, the skills that your team have. It's personal issues that happen that they want to talk to you about because it's impacting their work. There's, you know, outside of the working place, there's things that happen inside of the working place that aren't anything to do with the job role. It's just personal relationships, interactions, other departments. You have to manage spin so many plates at once
whilst doing your job
still. So what I think a business can do really to empower, I suppose, a good leadership team is really consider who you're putting in those leadership positions and have appropriate programs to prepare people for leadership. Your highest performer is not going to be your strongest leader. And if your highest performer is showing good leadership strengths, then help coach them before putting them in that role so that they are able to take on the challenges that inevitably come with being in leadership. And the reason why I say that boils back down again to D and I is because some of the leading reasons why women leave tech is because of the lack of nurture from leadership, lack of female leadership. And then it obviously stunts and it's a real knock-on effect.
Yeah, we did our Making Movements Insights survey and the main reasons were lack of support and development.
Exactly. So if you've got, it's sort of killing two birds with one stone, right? Because then you've got a lot more nurture going into the individuals who will be your leaders before you put them in a leadership position. More nurture and training when they're in a leadership position, and the knock-on effect that has is a much healthier and diverse team off the back of it.
Yeah, great point. We did an event with my sales coach about coaching, and they mentioned exactly that. People don't get taught how to coach.
No.
It's like day one, here's your role, congrats, you've been promoted. What do I do?
And
like,
you go
how do I
into
start?
your instant mindset when you, I think, first step into these positions is you go into strategy and you go, right, how can I improve the results? What KPIs do I need to tighten up on and put in place? Like, how am I going to get the team to reach this? The mistake that people can make, and it's because of lack of guidance on how to step into a leadership role, is to look at who you've got in your team and what their strengths are and getting to know them as individuals and understanding how to get the most out of them and focus from the ground up. The strategy and all of that good stuff should be a secondary.
Yeah.
But it feels like the knee-jerk reaction to go straight for when you step in. So it's even little things like that, as if there was a bit more understanding of what it takes to be successful in leadership and coaching and training that went around that before the point.
Just slow down. And this, I think, links so much to, we're going to get into empowering high performance advocacy for women in the industry and then really changing the DNA of a business. And that really links to that, is like not just doing it for a tick box exercise, like actually looking at your business. If you are struggling, we have a lot of companies that go, we want female candidates. Don't just send over female candidates. Like, let's address our values. Let's address our internal language. Let's actually take a really hard look at ourselves as a business, which is difficult, and change that DNA so that it can support and foster. Because yes, you can bring women into the business, but if they're not going to stay, you're not changing.
And that's in two ways, right? Because you've got, yes, if women aren't going to stay because it's not the right business for them to work and they're not getting the coaching and the training and the good leadership that they're after and will make them thrive, then they're going to leave. But if they're not right for the job, they're going to fail and they're going to leave.
Yeah.
So it's a two-sided coin. And that comment that you made about sort of, oh, I need more women in my team. Why aren't you as a recruiter sending me more women? Well, their gender's not going to make them good at the job. They still need to have the right skills, and it still needs to be the right career for them. So what are we doing to go to the bottom and figure out why we haven't got enough women, and why those women don't have the skills that we need as well, so that we stop making diversity hires and setting people up for failure?
Yeah. And we are going to dive into that topic because I think there's so much for us to cover. But starting with high performance, this was one of the questions that we asked you when interviewing for the elites, which is, how did you empower high performance with your team? Is there anything that you could share, some best practices?
Yeah, so it definitely was one of those things that took me a while to kind of understand. And what I think it really boiled down to for me was understanding how to pinpoint why somebody isn't performing. And we tend to focus a lot on the results and the input, especially in sales development. So it will be, is this person doing enough cold calls? Is this person, doing social selling, or are they just sending out a bunch of emails? So are they doing the right input, and is the quality of the input there? And therefore, is their output kind of coming off the back of it, and trying to, I suppose, focus on the area to diagnose a problem. I don't believe that that's the only reason why people sort of fail, I suppose, in their jobs, or don't perform to the level that they want to be performing to. So I sort of split it out across 3 areas. You've got your results, which is all of that stuff. You've got your skills, which is what drives the quality and ensures that you're focusing on every part of your job role. And then you've got behavior as well, which is a really key one. So I always say to people, I don't want someone on my team that's hitting 100% of quota every single month, but they're treading on everybody to get there and having a massively negative impact on company culture.
Yeah.
I also obviously don't want someone on my team who's the most amazing person in the world, but they're only ever hitting 40% of quota month on month, because I'm going to get pressure in the business for that person, to make a difficult decision. So the behavior part of it can really dictate what your results part of it is as well. So the way that I typically, I suppose, approach it is map out, what results do I need from the team, and what do they need to do to get there from an input perspective? What skills do they have to have in order to achieve that? And where am I going to lay my focus based on maybe skill gaps or best practice? And then what behavior am I going to expect out of my team as well? So for me, behavior would kind of constitute of like coachability, being a positive impact, and that kind of thing. Yeah. And then create a performance criteria around it with a really clear expectation on the team of what best of the best looks like within those areas. So then once you've kind of mapped that out and okay, this is the best of the best, now where are my team against this? And how am I going to support them create really structured goals to achieve everything across their results, their skills, and their behaviors? And how am I going to support them through that process? And it can't just be something that you push on the table and go, right, there you go, guys, there's your performance criteria.
I've done my work. Go.
Have fun. See you later.
I'm off to the shops.
I'm off. I'll be back.
Yeah.
This has to be something that's constantly worked on. So, when you're having your weekly one-to-ones, have a brief discussion about one of the goals that you set yourself. Have really structured a review system. I think quarterly reviews are great. Gives people enough time to kind of reach their goals and focus on their day-to-day job, but you're having that structured check-in and re-looking back at it. Make sure it's really there and visible for them to see, and they know what their goals are, and you've worked through them with that. And you as a leader are responsible for coaching an individual team member on what a good goal is as well. Because goal is such a flowery word. A goal could be like, I'm going to get up tomorrow. Great, that is a goal. Or a goal could be like, I'm going to achieve $200 a day
Yeah, smart goals.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a lot of dials, but you know what I mean. Like, you've got tangible goals as well, and none of them are supposed like wrong, but it depends what you're trying to get out of that team member. So coaching them to actually build these goals is important within that. So then you've got your framework, you've got your check-ins, and you're working it through with each individual team member, and they know how they're performing against that. But then the last layer, which I think is the most important layer, is then each individual and how they adapt to it, react to it, and work with these kind of performance criterias, because everybody is different and takes feedback differently and will also have different strengths, and that's absolutely fine. If you had everybody performing at exactly the same level with exactly the same strengths, we might as well be robots. It's not how life works.
Yeah.
So understanding, okay, so within the skills, yes, you need to have a certain level of competency with these to be able to perform in your job, but this is something that you're really, really good at, so let's amplify that and let's see how that can even further improve your results. So then you've got that sort of layering system.
I have so many questions. Right. This is so interesting, but I love like the thought that you put into each layer. And it's, I mean, you say like building a framework, there is that template for transparency from you, but also from your team. And so it's really clear, because I think also not only is like development and coaching one of the reasons why women specifically don't feel like they can be supported in that role, but it's also transparency when it comes to promotions, pay rises. Having that clear transparency from your manager across your team is so important, so that they can look at other people and go, yeah, actually, do you know what? Like, I feel like I'm performing the same as this person. Why are they at this level? Oh, well, there's a disparity there. So when you're talking about goals, are you creating a transparency across your team where you're saying, hey everyone, this is Bob's goal, he hasn't hit them, and like this is Jill's, I don't know why I've just gone for Bob and Jill as the most basic.
They're amazing. I know people called Bob or Jill.
Well, that's the reason why I was like, I can't say a name that I know. They'll be like, are you talking about me? But yeah, would you sit there? Because also when you look at goals, it can be really daunting to maybe in your team check-ins get the goals up on the screen and go, yeah, these haven't been hit. You need to be mindful, but also you want that visibility.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where team accountability comes in. And I personally believe the only way of creating team accountability is to have really safe team calls where you just sort of naturally talk about these things. You don't want it, if you start pulling things up on screens like, oh, this was your goal last quarter, or this is, or why didn't Izzy, you talk us through this goal? That sort of thing.
Why didn't you hit it?
It starts to feel like you're sort of giving a presentation on yourself.
Yeah.
If you embed talking about individual goals or something each other's working on into normal conversations, there's less pressure on the conversation. So if you're sort of sat in team meetings and you're like, oh, Izzy's working on something really interesting at the moment, you're looking at how to do this, aren't you? And then you'll be like, oh yeah, so, and you can at the same time give a bit of praise in that to make someone feel like, she's doing a really good job on working on this, why don't you tell the team about it?
Yeah.
You're kind of setting someone up to feel a little bit more comfortable in that environment, because you're right, the transparency is really important, understanding what each other's working on is really important. And alongside that, I think back to sort of, I suppose, an individual basis, I'm a big believer that there should be nobody on your team that is questioning what their performance is and what the business views their performance to be. So if it comes around to that promotion time and they're questioning why they didn't get it, something's gone wrong in that, because they should know what they're working on and they should know why they might not be ready for that next step yet. It doesn't always play out, because then there's also human mindset involved, and some people, although with the best will in the world, are working through these goals, they might be a little bit in denial to their own performance. And that happens as a leader. Like, it happens all the time, and that's absolutely fine. You work with that individual through those kind of conversations. So it's not a blanket, this is absolutely going to work for everybody. It doesn't. But it at least means you have something to refer back to all the time. You have some documentation, you have conversations to refer back to, and the expectations there are really clear.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of reverse that conversation a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so to finish off this arc of high performance, I know you have touched in like the transparency, but then also the quarterly reviews to make sure that people are up to date on their goals and those check-ins. But is there any framework, since you have a framework for goals, that you would give to our listeners to consider when doing effective feedback or coaching to really help drive that?
Yeah, so we'll talk about the coaching element to that, because I think that ties in really nicely with especially the sort of skills and behaviours element to this. A lot of the conversations around this kind of, I suppose, performance matrix and criteria, it tends to fall into sort of one-to-ones and reviews and things like that. But actually, the coaching is what's going to improve and allow people to reach those goals, as like within the skills behaviours, which obviously dictates the results. So I love the framework Oscar. The reason why I like it so much is because it's about the outcome, not just the process. So when you're setting a goal with somebody, it's quite easy for it to just be like oh yeah, I'm going to improve on, I don't know, social selling, for example. Okay, great. How are we going to improve? And what do you mean by I want to improve on social selling? What outcome do you actually want to see? Is it that you want more meetings booked from social selling, or you want to drive more conversations through social selling, or what's that specific goal? So how I tend to manage it with my team members is I'll sort of say I'll do coaching plans, which are normally 8 to 9 weeks long, and at the start of the 8 to 9 weeks I'll get each IC to pick out maybe 3 or 4 topics that they want to focus on, and I'll sort of say, okay, why do you want to focus on them? Let's break it. If someone says cold calling, for example, I'll be like, okay, that's very broad. Let's pull that back a little bit. What do you mean? Is it your tone? Is it the questions you're asking? Is it your openers? Is it your commercial? Let's focus on one specific area of it. I'll then say, okay, so for your, let's say, commercial, where do you rate yourself out of 10 on that at the moment? They might be like, I don't know, a 4 or a 5, fairly middling. I go, okay, so where do you want to be at the end of this 8 to 9 weeks out of 10? Be like a 6, a 7. If they stay too high, I'll normally pull them back down again because it's unachievable. So we make sure that, again, I'm coaching them on being achievable within their goals, but they've now got something a little bit more tangible to work towards. We'll then discuss what we're going to do. So every week they will have a 30-minute coaching session with me where I sit down and watch them, or we do some role play or whatever it is that looks like. And I'll give them constant feedback within that. But then the important part of it is they have to tell me what they're going to do as well. So coaching is a really interesting topic, because when I don't know, any IC, AEs, SDRs, I'm sure CS, account management, say I want more training and coaching, it feels very management dependent in that ask. So you need to give me more. Okay, and I will give you more, but what are you going to give into that as well? Because if I need to do 50% of the work and you need to do 50% of the work. So within that conversation of how they're going to get to that 6 out of 10, it needs to also be, so this is the time I'm giving you. These are the sessions that I think would be beneficial for you, but what are you going to do to get to that 6 out of 10? So it's driving that two-way accountability and best practice to kind of then support them reaching their goals. And I will check in with them. But, how's that going? You said you were going to do this. Have you done that? It might be, I'm going to post every week on LinkedIn because that will drive my social presence. How are those posts going? I could do the check-ins, but it's up to them to do the posts.
Yeah, and that's also the best way to learn, though, because it is adding to that self-awareness piece instead of just being told by your manager, do this, and not really understanding why you're doing that.
Yeah.
And being self-aware of what you need to work on and bringing that to the table.
Yeah,
because also as a manager, you should know most areas that the rep needs to improve on, but there are going to be elements that you're not aware of, and if they don't tell you, there might just be that one thing that you're like, there's something just not clicking here.
It's not,
and it's because they're not bringing that to the table.
Exactly that. And I will always say that the best people that I have ever worked with and the most successful people I have ever worked with are those that get on with it and try new things. And if they've got a problem, find 3 answers before going and asking, and really drive their own coaching and learning. And they're coming and seeking coaching and learning, and they're getting it, and they're, being coachable, which is great, but they're driving it themselves as well. And that's sort of, I suppose, being conscientious and really, pushing yourself is what I think takes people to that, into that A player, next level territory.
We could do a whole episode on high performance. There's so many things that you've said, but I just think this is really, really helpful, and thank you for sharing that. I'm sure our listeners have taken so much from this. But moving into the second part, which is why you won this award, which is the advocacy that you do for women. So can you chat to us a little bit about things that you do outside of your role? Because I think that's what a lot of people think, I'm an advocate for women. I celebrate the women in my team, but don't necessarily step step outside of the four walls of their company, and that's in turn not going to drive change in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I learned pretty early days was the phrase echo chamber. And I liked that one because it made sense. And when I started, I suppose, taking more of a keen interest in driving female representation in tech, I joined these kind of internal groups of, you know, women in tech internal groups sort of thing in the business that I was in. And I just noticed really quickly that it was just everybody saying the same thing to each other. Yeah. It's like, okay, great.
Well, what do we do here? Is this a bitch club, or is it just...
Literally, is there anything we can do with this? And I'd start asking questions like, oh, okay, so who can we talk to about that?
Yeah.
Or who can we go to about that? But, oh, you know, no one really listens. Like that sort of mindset.
Yeah.
And it's a bit pointless, I suppose. It is. Because actually, there's an argument to say that it's creating a safe space for women to talk about the things that are bothering them, right? There is that argument to say it. But you know, like, when you're in a relationship and you're really annoyed at the way that your partner's treated you, and you go to your friend and you moan about it, and they back you up to the hill because they're being your friend, and that's lovely. But all they're doing is confirming to you that there is a problem. There's no actual solution. You kind of walk away a bit fired up, don't you? And you're like, yeah, idiot. Like,
you feel so good,
yeah,
but then you're just
like,
like,
yeah, I am right about everything. And I'm so angry. Yeah. And we all do it, right? It's kind of the same concept in a sense, because you rile each other up a bit and you're like, yeah, this is really shit actually. Like, I'm actually really angry about this, but it's not channeled anywhere. It just sort of sits in the room, and then you walk away and you're like, yeah, it's good to get that off my chest.
Not really.
And nothing changes. So
but the good friends will tell you what to do and actually give you the hard truth.
Right?
Yeah.
So with that, in that kind of concept in place, is you need people in that room that are going to challenge your perspective, because you might be wrong sometimes, and you do need to be challenged on your way of thinking. So people that can challenge your perspective, but people that can also help to make a change, not just people that are upset about something, the people that can actually rewrite the policies, get re-involved in opening up the conversation with more senior, you know, members of the team, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing. And then it's sort of, I suppose, sparked more interest in me to understand, I suppose, why these problems exist in the first place. And a lot of that came from when I was in retail. So I had anyone that sort of knows my background, I had quite a long career in retail before I came into B2B. So I was like managing Topshop stores, multiple, when I was 24. Throwback, love that company. Listen. So I was like, my first management role was when I was 20, and I wasn't prepared for that at all. And retail's quite a harsh environment as well. And there was this report that was released every now and again that showed the pay gap in the business. And if you know retail, you'll know that women outweigh men disproportionately in terms of employees, right? But the pay gap was demonstrating that men were still paid more than women in the business. And we had, in our area alone, there was this sort of, I suppose, rumour going around that seemed to be very founded, was that one of the store managers that was male was paid probably about 20k more than one of the female managers on the same size turnover store.
Oh my gosh.
So that, I was like, what? This is insane. And I wasn't on much money at all as a store manager in Topshop, like at all. So yeah, I felt pretty hard done by it. And then interestingly, coming into software, obviously it's the other way around, so there's less women, more men. Wasn't actually something I paid too much attention to initially, because I think I just had the concept that would be the case. And then I suppose when piecing everything together, it spurred me on to trying to find out a bit more why that was. There's this really interesting book that I suppose sparked it a bit more, and it's called Walk the Talk, Women in Fintech by Nadia Dadashti. who's an amazing woman and does a huge amount. She's in recruitment, Harrington Star, and she does a huge amount for driving awareness of specifically women in misrepresentation of women in fintech, which is actually slightly lower than the industry standard. So
even lower.
It goes even lower at that point. I think it was 19% roughly at one point. Industry standards like 27-ish in tech. So it is like a lot lower. So off the back of that, being in fintech and realising not only was I in an industry where women were underrepresented, but then in a sort of subsect of the industry where we're even more underrepresented, that was kind of what sparked it all. And there was a couple of things that I absolutely hated, and I absolutely hate to this day, and there's a few phrases, you've probably heard them quite a lot. We need more women on the team because I've got too many men. My recruiter's not sending me enough women. I can't hire him because I really need a woman on my team. And actually, there's a scenario that makes me a bit irritated is when I hear male leadership saying things like, oh, female leadership's so much stronger, I way prefer having female leaders on my team, but then never hire female leadership.
It's like you're saying the right things, but you're not doing action.
Yeah. Exactly. So and there's a reason why all of those things irritate me. And it's because it just makes it feel like, women are just like a commodity to throw at the situation. Like, I just need any woman will do. I just need a woman. B, you can't solve a problem by creating a problem. So you're then discriminating against men, which I find bizarre, because if I think into like my personal life, if I heard that my boyfriend or my dad didn't get a job because of their gender, I'd be livid.
Yeah.
I'd be like, but they're amazing. Like, why didn't you hire them? It's insane. So you can't solve a problem by creating a problem. Mm-hmm. And that, I feel, has tended to be the general mindset when it's come to fixing diversity in companies.
I just feel like it's a lot of blaming as well.
Yeah, a lot of blaming. And we know where this, and I think we know where it comes from. We know it comes from, if you look at education in the UK, and it has changed a little bit over the years, but only fractionally, is men tend to be more drawn towards the subjects like maths, engineering, construction. Women tend to be more drawn towards sociology, performing arts.
I mean, we both did performing arts.
Exactly.
So we are
two perfect use cases here. And I think any woman that has chosen those subjects that fit more with kind of the statistics will know why they chose those subjects and why they didn't choose the other subjects. I had absolutely no interest in studying business or science or technology. No interest at all. I had more interest in performing arts. And there's a reason for that. It's social, it's education. And that all comes from a really, really young age.
Yeah, but I also think there's so many parts, like, to pigeonhole yourself, because I always do this. I'll always say, I'm not good at finances. Jack, you do the finances. Like, I don't want to touch that.
Yeah.
But actually, there probably is elements of finance that I would be good at, but I am like putting myself in a bucket saying I'm bad at finance. So I'm not going to touch it. That's not my job. Somebody else can do that. But it's so important for women to be financially literate, for us to be able to talk about like knowing the data, backing up like what you're worth, being smart about investments and ways to look after your money. And I think we're so quick to just like put things into buckets of stereotypes, but actually you can not be good at numbers but still be able to do it well.
Exactly that. And I think that mindset stems back from school as well.
So there's a lot that you're doing to support women getting into the industry.
Go back
from school,
to the start. Yeah. So I think with that mindset, what I sort of realised was I don't like how people are treating solving diversity at this level. We need to stop looking short term and look long term at this point. If we go so full blown short term, we end up with, discrimination on the other side, which isn't good and it shouldn't be happening. And we end up with also filling the roles of the wrong people, which I think some people are a bit scared of talking about. But it's only natural that if you're hiring someone based on their gender, you're not hiring them based on their skill set. And it was the same way for men as well, if it were the other way around. But you have to hire people based on their skill and the impact they can bring to a business. Yeah. Because especially in sales, it's too fast paced.
Yeah.
And you will set them up for failure if you don't have the right things in the business to grow. So going back to the start and dealing with it there for a longer term success is really important. So some things that I've done is sort of go and speak to universities. And speak to young people. So I was involved in some mentorship programs where I spoke to young university students that were sort of deciding what to do next and not really knowing where to channel their skill sets, and sort of opening their eyes to where those skill sets could actually be transferable in industries they hadn't necessarily considered yet. Not even necessarily tech, but making them realise that just because you have this certain skill set doesn't mean that there's a linear path. It can be transferable across multiple different areas. I did a panel for a university, which was really good, where they were actually all looking potentially at going into tech, but didn't really know what they needed to do to get there. And there were plenty of women on there as well, which was great because they were quite early stages in their sort of, in their learning. And then also working with charities as well. I've always liked to try and stay involved in charity work. I just find it personally quite fulfilling. But the types of people that you meet through doing that are the types of people that you can start educating about these industries as well, and what skills are transferable and how to be sort of, I suppose, successful and drive towards it. So I'm a big believer that if you're doing things like that and you're looking at the long-term goal by going back to the start, these are the type of people that will be in this business in, 10, 15 years time.
Yeah.
You're avoiding, doing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you've said there, Emma, is like just a true representation that there are people for those roles. There are people that want to get into this industry. We just need to give them the support and the confidence to be able to make that leap and bring them in. But there's so many more things that we could talk about. But just to wrap up, because I know that you wanted to talk about changing the DNA, and you've already touched on it, of making sure that you're hiring in the language that you're using. And I think we could do a whole episode about this. But is there anything that you specifically, because I know that you hire SDRs and you have experience doing that you can share on like a transparent framework to make sure there's no bias, that you are looking at the skills to make sure that they're right for the job, that you're not just looking at, oh, I look like I'd get on with them and we could go to the Wicked at the theatre together and we'd be besties, but they're actually right for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So have a really robust hiring system. That's my biggest bit of advice. When I was initially hiring at one of my previous companies and doing quite big cohorts of hiring, I was asking questions to people to uncover competencies. But then I'd get to the end of the week, I'd interviewed maybe sort of 15, 20 people, and I couldn't rank them against each other at all. I'd be saying, yes, this is a really strong candidate, a strong yes to this one, or yeah, this was a yes. But if I could actually compare them against each other, I wasn't able to. So something that I found really helpful was I built myself a sort of point scoring system to use in interviews.
Nice.
So if somebody's, used certain phrases or given certain examples, especially situational, they get a certain amount of points for the answer in that question. If they've, I suppose, like given something that I don't want to hear, it's deducted, and you go along like that. And to make it successful, you have to lay out what you want to hear, and what sort of things do I want to hear as the answer to this question? What are the things I need to hear included to demonstrate it? And so you have to have it robust in front of you, otherwise it's just scoring for the sake of scoring. But then what I was able to do off the back of that was actually compare the candidates in a much more robust way, because I was able to see how I felt in that moment through a scoring system. There are some really good tools out there that can help with stuff like this, where they sort of are those assistants that sit into interviews and they can take notes for you, which can be really beneficial. And it can pick out key phrases that you want to hear. So you're like, oh, that candidate did mention something about this. And well, they did give a situation example about how they could, be resilient, or whatever it is that you're trying to uncover. But having that scoring system in place can really help reduce that bias, especially because, to your point, in a lot of interviews, it's very easy as the hiring manager to get on with someone. You could kind of overlook that they haven't said certain things, because you're like, they're going to be such a good impact on the team. They're really, whatever it is.
Yeah.
but the scoring brings it back down again.
And it's also easy if you're working with a panel of different people. That
Exactly.
You have that transparency and that everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last thing about changing the DNA, because and I'm sure there's so much work that people and businesses need to do to change the DNA to make an impact for women. But if you were to say my wish list of 5 things that businesses could take away from this and go away and really look at and really study and get your hands dirty and be uncomfortable, what would those 5 things change?
Yeah, definitely. So I think number 1 is, if you have, which I do believe you should have, groups within your business that represent minorities, don't let them be echo chambers. If you've got a women group, make sure there are men in there.
Yeah.
Make sure there are leadership positions in there of varying levels, so that you're creating actionable insights from those conversations. Within that, I would strongly encourage businesses to get involved in things like going to universities and making an impact from the start. So if you are able to do it, go and talk to young people, go and spread the word, go and get involved in universities. You can do mentorship programs that will work with your business as well, so you can get your teams involved. There's so many different ways that you can get involved, but know then that you are making an impact for the people of the future of your business, not just the people that you can hire right now. So yeah, make your groups count and actionable, and use those groups to spur early education to change it for the long run. Number 2, have robust hiring processes. Don't rely on leaders. Don't make the assumption that your leaders know what they're doing when it comes to hiring, because it's a minefield, and it's an area that needs coaching, and it's a really difficult area. It's very easy for a business to turn around and be like, you've made the wrong hires, Izzy. But you could be sat there being like, I don't know how I'm making the wrong hires. I don't know how to make better hires. So focus on that. Focus on recruitment being a coachable skill within your leaders. Ensure that they know what they're doing, and give them a robust process so they can reduce bias, and they can point score, and they can look at skill and not everything else that comes with it. Number 3, look at how you're advertising yourself as a business. As a woman, I'm really drawn to, when I go on companies' websites, to see pictures of teams, and you can see the kind of culture that they're representing. You go on their LinkedIn, and I'm sure there's a lot of statistics out there about how many people job hunt through LinkedIn these days.
Yeah.
How are you representing yourself as a business? Like, are you showing that you've got female leadership? Are you showing that you've got a good culture? Are you promoting that you enjoy collaboration, coachability, and all those things that make it attractive for women to work in your business? Number 4, go back to leadership team again. Really focus on the leaders that you have, and that they are able to coach, and that you're putting the right people in those roles as well. Don't make the mistake of being one of those many people that just put your highest performing IC into a leadership role. Be smarter than that. Look at the key skills, look at the competencies, train people towards those positions, empower them when they are in those positions, and continue to coach them, so that when you've got a team of diverse people, they want to stay in your business because they've got the leadership to support with that growth. And then number 5, seek external support as well. Don't be scared to go and talk to people and ask for support on things like your job ads and how you're representing yourself as well, because there are plenty of people that can help with it. And even the smallest things can make the biggest impacts when driving in instant diversity, I suppose, to your business, and instant appeal for women to work with you.
The most perfect framework for anybody to just snip up and go and take and make moves. And that's why we called the award in the community Making Moves, is like actually doing something about it, not being an echo chamber, like you said, and talking about it, and actually making those actions. Emma, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat today. But as we end every episode on Sales Unfiltered, what is one challenge that you faced in your career or life that shaped you to where you are today?
I think one challenge that I'm hoping some people watching this might be able to connect to is actually just my personality has been a challenge. So I'm a loud person.
Are you?
Am I? I don't know.
You seemed really shy. This was painful.
So quiet. And it's not just loud in terms of, I've got a loud laugh. My voice is loud. It carries. I'm for people that know I'm a classically trained singer. So I just use all my lung capacity all the time. So I've got a loud voice. But I am also opinionated. And sometimes that hasn't landed well to me, and I haven't channeled that in the right way. And I think one big learning curve for me, and something I really had to focus on, was ensuring that my opinions were put across in a structured way, and I was able to be challenged on my opinions as well. Because there's been plenty of times in my career and in my personal life where I've put opinions on the table and I'm not willing to listen to other people's perspectives because I'm absolutely certain I've got this right. Like, no, this is a problem and I know it's a problem. And I can confirmation bias myself out of it by finding lots of things that will back me up, but I'm not willing to hear the other perspective.
That's interesting.
So that's been a big learn for me, is how to put my opinions across in a constructive way, and how to allow myself to be open to be challenged on my perspective and learn from other people from lots of different walks of life as well. Because I'm only in my own lane.
Yeah.
You've got to hear other
people's.
people's.
I love that. But then also, as somebody that like promotes diversity and diversity of thought as well, you have to practice what you preach.
You do have to practice what you preach. And it's very easy for us to sit, and especially with this kind of subject matter, and be very strong on this is not the problem and this needs to change. And actually my mindset towards the discrimination on men can't be a thing. That is from men challenging me. Rightly so.
Yeah.
Well, why don't I deserve that job?
Yeah.
Because of my gender. Is that not the same thing in reverse? So you have to be open to be challenged on your perspective. So I think my personality, with all of those things involved, not everybody's going to get on with that. So I think there's two sides to that. There's the learning how to put opinions across in the right way as an opinionated person, which is really important. But there's two, also understanding that you're not everybody's cup of tea as well. Not everybody likes, right? Like, we're very similar personality types.
And it's hard because you want to be liked. I'm such a person that wants to be liked.
With us, we are the type of people that want to be liked, and it's hurtful when you feel like people don't like you. But it's also part of life, and learning how to adapt to that is important. It's something I'm constantly trying to work on. But I think that's probably been my biggest challenge, and which is why, on a sort of finishing note and going back to hiring a little bit, is when you reject people from a role, using the phrase a poor cultural fit is not productive, okay?
The worst.
At all.
What is your culture?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Oh,
so
God, yeah.
that actually has a lot of layers, that phrase, because it could be personality, it could be the way that you present yourself, it could be anything. So I think that's a phrase that should be banned.
Absolutely.
It's about the cultural fit. I don't like that. But yeah, so I think in a nutshell, my biggest challenge has been actually feeling comfortable and confident with who I am as an individual, and how to improve but also accept myself.
I love that challenge so much. It's one of my favourite ones. But like, well done for being self-aware to realise that, because when you are passionate, like both of us are, about this topic or about any topic, it's hard and scary sometimes to speak out, because you are fearful that people might go, well, you got that wrong, or you've insulted me. So that is where I really, really push and ask that people have the courage and the confidence to speak up for what's wrong and what they believe in, because people too often would rather say nothing than say something. And if we are all in this mindset of no one's doing this or saying this to be a dick, we're just trying to make change and be better and grow and learn from each other, then we're all going to be able to be in this place of like giving each other feedback and supporting each other. And then hopefully it's never a personal attack if somebody goes, actually, Emma, I listened to you on that podcast and I didn't agree with you. You'd be like, great, let's chat, let's go for coffee. Why didn't you believe in me, believe in what I was saying? And I want to learn from you. And I think that's such a powerful thing. So thank you so much for sharing that. I've loved this chat. We've chatted for far too long, but I could chat for even longer. Thank you so much for listening, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sales Unfiltered. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button, and if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a quick review. See you next week.